I sent you on the Achet Mimem Dax a tefillah. The problem is there's one ahead. I want you to look at the tefillah Dax 4, not 5. Number 4 is about the 13 principles of faith. Number 5 is about the Elokeinu, which is before the Akedah. I was originally planning to do that. I thought it over. I decided that we're going to do Ani Maimin first. Okay, so if you go to your Google Docs, it's Tefillah 4, not Tefillah 5. In other words, it's not the it's not the last document that you need. It's the document before. Okay, now you'll see that there are 2 Tefillah 4 documents. One is a document with questions, and the other is a PDF. That's, if I think it's 6 pages long, okay? The first 2 pages you recognize because when I did Ani Maimin, I referenced them, and then I added 4 more pages. Now, don't get nervous. These pages are really for my ego and guilt. In other words, if you don't want to look at the last 4 pages, don't worry about it. We're going to be learning the first 2 pages. That's all we're going to be doing. Like I said, the last 4 pages are an elaborate version of what's written on the first 2 pages. So let me tell you what's going to happen. Okay, I don't know how many more. Today's Wednesday. I'm supposed to do this on Sunday. Everything has gotten crazy because of whatever. I didn't realize that Ache doesn't have school on Monday. It threw me for a loop. I don't know how many more Sundays we have, but the next couple of Sundays, we're going to be going through the 13 principles of faith. We're going through the Ani Maimins. Okay, so I'm going to give you some basic information that's very, very important to know and very important to our faith. And even though we don't say Ani Maimin, we're going to learn it. Because as the Rebbe always says, we don't say the Ani Maimins, but we think and meditate on the Ani Maimins. So I'm going to give you information about the 13 principles of faith. If God will allow, we'll get to the text and we'll actually read them. And this is going to take more than one class. So here's the beginning of the background, okay? And like I said to you, we had this conversation in a previous class that when we did Adain Olam, and if you remember, when we did Adain Olam, I got really excited because Adain Olam it's a meditation. Adain Olam is a conversation that a person has with himself about the Eibishter. And we don't have too many such meditations where there's no conversation going on, where you're not talking to Hashem, and so on. Adain Olam is Pashat a muse. It's a Beinoi Lebeinatzma. It's a conversation you have with yourself. And it made me think of Ani Maimin. And then I sent you the Ani Maimin, and I sent you Yigdal and said, you know what? Let's do it. Okay, if this is the worst thing we ever do as Lubavitcher Hasidim, it'll be an incredible brach. Here's the deal, okay? A.B. Rottenberg, I hope you know who A.B. Rottenberg is, because if you don't, I'm really old. A.B. Rottenberg is an incredibly talented artist who does, just one second. A.B. Rottenberg is an incredibly talented artist who does music, Jewish music. And some of his Jewish music is, just a style. He has a style. And some of his Jewish music is incredibly creative and original. For example, he wrote the song Neshamala. He wrote the song that they played all the Haas concerts, We Are Not So Different. He wrote the song Little Kite. He wrote classics, really, songs that, if you listen to the lyrics, are unbelievably important. And one of the songs that he wrote, and if I know it, it was written 30 years ago, because I haven't listened to music in that many years, 20 years, is, Daddy, please tell me, what do we believe? It's a song. Daddy, please tell me what do we believe. It's a song with a chorus where a little boy says to his father, what do we believe? We're Jewish people. We learn Torah, we do mitzvahs. But what do we believe? In other words, we live a certain way. We do certain things. We eat certain foods. We dress a certain way. We use our time in a certain fashion. We socialize in a particular fashion. We do so many things. But all of those do's are predicated on core beliefs before there is the practical life of the Jew, whether that is learning, or that is davening, or that is doing mitzvahs, or that is eating cholent on Shabbos, or not eating rice on Pesach, or yes, eating rice on Pesach, whatever your particular tendency and shita and minhag and family tradition is, there's our beliefs. And he has this song, Daddy, please tell me, what do we believe? It's in his style. It's very soft and very, very meaningful. Now, I don't know the lyrics of that song, but I just remember this song where he says, Daddy, please tell me, what do we believe? And you know what? That's a very good question. And it's a question that deserves an answer. And I will say, going into this conversation, that of all the Jews in the world, the Jewish people who probably spend the most time on this question are the modern Orthodox. Haredi Jews who come from Hasidic worlds like ours, and even who come from Misnagdic worlds, from Litvische worlds and Elamische worlds, are much more busy learning Torah and doing mitzvahs than asking the question, what are our core beliefs? What do we believe? What do we believe? Jews who are more modern and more worldly, more open, ask these questions more directly, and they spend a lot of time on what you and I would call hashkafa. You know, what is the Jewish belief? What do the Jewish people think of when a bad things happen? Is it God's fault? Is it not God's fault? And things of this sort. We don't talk about that kind of stuff nearly as much. Again, this is just my sense, and I could very well be wrong, as modern Orthodox Jews do. But it's a question that deserves an answer. What are our core beliefs? What do we believe? I suppose you could say that if you're raised in a Hasidic home, there's a presumption that just by living in that home, you'll figure out what the beliefs are. But nobody actually sits you down and tells you, hey, this is what we believe. When you go off to yeshiva, maybe in Fabrengens, not maybe, in Fabrengens you'll hear occasionally a conversation which will go towards Ikri Hadas. What are our core beliefs? But an organized series of classes, or even one class, where you sit down and answer this question, Daddy, what do we believe? What are the core beliefs of the Jewish people, which is the basis for the life the Jewish people have lived for thousands of years, and the basis for the Jewish life that I live, and the Mitzvah Hashem, the basis life that my children are going to live on into the future? What are our core beliefs? So there's a simple answer to the question. Open up a Rambam. Not the Mishnah Torah, not the Rambam's halachic sefer, but the Rambam's commentary to Mishnah. It's called Pirush HaMishnayos LaHarambam. Now, for those who do not know the Rambam's history, and I don't know it well, but I know it basically, the Rambam wrote his Pirush HaMishnayos when he was very young. It was in his early 20s. Well before, probably 20 years before, he wrote what we call the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah, the Yad HaChazaka. He was a relatively young man. It was in the earlier part of his life that he wrote the commentary on Mishnah, the Pirush HaMishnayos. Later on, he would write other Sfarim, the Sefer HaMitzvahs, and then the Rambam, and then the letters of the Rambam, and of course, at the end of his life, towards the end of his life, he also wrote the Moreh Nevuchim. In the Rambam's commentary on Mishnah, so he explains all Shisha Sedrei Mishnah, but amongst the things that he does is he has what you would call books within books. Periodically, the Rambam will pick a topic and explore it comprehensively in the unique, concentrated and lucid and clear style that is so unique and characteristic to the Rambam. For example, the Rambam's introduction to Mishnah is introduction to Torah. You want to know what Torah is? Read the Rambam's introduction to Mishnah. You want to read what Chasidus is? Read the Rambam's introduction to the Pirkei Avos. Okay? One of the books within a book that the Rambam wrote, he wrote in the beginning of the last chapter of Sanhedrin. The last chapter of Sanhedrin is about schar. That perek begins with a mission that every one of us knows. We say it every Shabbos during the summer. Kol Yisrael yesh la mechelek l'olam haba shenemar v'yamech kulam tzadikim l'olam yeshu aretz netzam atay maser l'spoir. The principle of Ganed, of schar v'oinish, a reward and punishment. And of course, the Mishnah then goes on to discuss v'elu she'ein lam elam haba, gets very, very involved. Rambam uses this Mishnah in the last chapter of Sanhedrin to talk about all of our core beliefs. In other words, The Mishnah speaks about one thing. The Mishnah simply speaks about the idea of reward and punishment. I'm sorry. The Mishnah simply mentions the idea of schar v'einish. Where you have elam haba, you don't have elam haba, and the Rambam talks about a whole bunch of different things. But the bottom line is that Rambam decides to use this place in Shas, this Mishnah in Sanhedrin, as his excuse, as his medium, to discuss all 30 principles of faith. And he elucidates them, he lists them one after the next. And if any of you open up the PDF that I sent you, and you don't have such a hard time with Hebrew, you have all 13 principles. Here it is. I hope the papers came out in order, because I'm realizing that I may have put them in the wrong order. If the pages are not in order, all the pages are there. The last page would be the page that you need. But I believe all 13 principles in order. You have Yesed Harishan, Yesed Hasheni, Yesed Hashlishi. If you want to read a more comprehensive version of this, look through the PDF and you'll find all 30 principles. By the way, the Rambam's commentary to Mishnah is certainly translated into English. I don't know where to find it. I know who translated it, but I'm sure it's translated in English. You can read in English the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. Now, the Rambam wrote this down. Was he the first person to think of, tell me, Father, what do we believe? No, of course not. Jews have been discussing what we call Ikri Hadas, our core beliefs, since we become a nation. But the Rambam wrote them down. The Rambam actually spent the time to consolidate them and to organize them and to distill them, to cook them down into 13 principles. And they're called, therefore, the Yud Gimel Ikri Hamun of the Rambam, the 13 principles of faith of the Rambam. People before him talked about it, people after him talked about it, and so on. Now, after the Rambam, many people came along and they wrote Sfarim based on the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. What the Rambam talks about in 2 or 3 pages, for example, the Abarbanel has an entire, his name is Abdon Yitzchak Abarbanel, has an entire sefer, which is called the Rosh Hashanah, which is an analysis of the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. And there were others as well who've written books analyzing what the Rambam writes about in 2.5 or 3 pages in very expansive and voluminous ways. Not everybody agrees with everything the Rambam says. There are disagreements with the Rambam. For example, one of the great philosophers was a Jew by the name of Rabbi Yosef Albu, Aleph Lamed Beis Vav. Rabbi Yosef Albu wrote a sefer which is called Sefer Ha'ikrim. Ha'ikrim. He has 4 ikrim. Rabbi Yosef Albu in the Sefer Ikrim, which I have never read, I'm being candid, I never learned it. It's referenced a lot in the Rebbe Siches, but I have never learned it. Disagrees with how the Rambam divides up the ikrim. He doesn't hold you necessarily have to say that there's 13. It's enough to say that there's 4. So once the Rambam wrote the 13 principles of faith, it became a discussion. And for hundreds of years now, Jewish people have been talking about the Yud Gimel Ikrim. Now, once upon a time, and when I say once upon a time, I mean to say I have no idea when it happened, a Jew sat down, and I promise you he wasn't me or you. He was probably a big rabbi, a big Talmud Chacham, a very Erlich Yid. I would gamble that he was a Sephardi, but I wouldn't bet a lot on it because it's impossible to know. And he decided to make out of the Rambam's 13 principles of faith a prayer. Something that everybody could say. The Rambam wrote in his commentary on Mishnah that people should know. What Daddy, please tell me, what do I believe? Believe the 13 core beliefs of the Jewish people. Somebody sat down, it's hard to know who, and he wrote down the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. Now, there's a few things I can tell you about this person. He never met the Rambam. The Rambam did not see his prayer. The Rambam neither approved nor disapproved of what he did. Somebody sat down a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, and wrote down the Yud Gimel Ikrim as a prayer that people could say as a means of affirming, of verbally affirming, of saying with their mouth every day, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in this. Okay? I just want to tell you an interesting little aside. I occasionally speak in Chabad houses. And some of the Chabad houses I speak at, have a significant percentage of frum people, but some of the Chabad houses I speak at, nobody's religious. And I was in a particular Chabad house, and the people were quite secular. And a guy got up in shul and read out loud the Berich Shemay in English. Do you know what Berich Shemay is? Does anybody know what Berich Shemay is? Anybody? Right. Berich Shemay, we say, when you take out the Sefer Torah, it's from Zohar, you open up the Aron Kodesh, and while the Aron is open, you say Berich Shemay. There's a lot of people who have a minhag to try very hard to get psicha, because they want to stand with their face to the Sefer Torah. In other words, their head in the Aron Kodesh, as they say Berich Shemay. In Berich Shemay, we affirm a lot of things. We say, Elokok Sheit, God is true. Or Isaac Sheit, his Torah is true. Nevi'oyi is true. His prophets are true, and so on. So I was supposed to speak right after laning, and this man got up, and he read in English all the 13 principles of faith. All those things. God is true, the Torah is true, his prophets are true, serving him is true, and so on. So when I got to make my speech, I said this may come across as a little bit offensive, but the entire congregation read Berich Shmei in English. And everybody said, God is true, his Torah is true, his prophets are true, worshiping him is true. And I asked a very, very offensive question. Does everybody in this room actually mean it? A room of 100 men and women said in English. Nobody could say they didn't understand what they were saying. They didn't say it in Arabic, they said it in English. God is true, his Torah is true. So I asked them, do you really believe it? And of course my answer was a classic blank stare. Do not ask such questions or we won't hire you again. But I was trying to make a point. When a person says, I believe, he has to mean it. And in Berich Shmei, we do make affirmations. In Berich Shmei, we announce. Every single one of us says, God is true, his Torah is true, his prophets are true. So somebody wrote down, getting back to our point, a prayer that begins with the words, Ani Ma'amin B'emunah Shlema, I believe with perfect faith. And then he elucidates the 13 principles of the Rambam. So he wrote 13 lines. Okay, and if you'll open up the PDF, it's the bottom of the first page. And the beginning of the second page are 13 Ani Ma'amins. Ani Ma'amin B'emunah Shlema, one thing. Ani Ma'amin B'emunah Shlema, the second thing, all the way till number 13. Now, either this same person or some other guy, but I don't know, wrote another prayer, which is again the Yud Gimel Iknei Emunah. It's again the 13 principles of faith. However, he, instead of writing it in what's called in prose, in straight lines, he wrote them in a shiur. He wrote them in a poem. He wrote them in what's called rhyme, and that's called Yigdal. Yigdal is directly, if you're looking at your PDF, it's the middle section of the first page is Yigdal. Yigdal has 13 lines because there's 13 core beliefs. Ani Ma'amin has 13 lines because there's 13 core beliefs. And a Yid whose name we don't know, as far as I know, we don't know his name, wrote these two prayers, encouraging Jewish people to actually orally affirm, to say with their mouth, I believe in all of these things, okay? And in many Sidurim, Sfardim and Ashkenazim, Chasidim and Misnagdim, both of these prayers are said. It's very, very common for people to say Yigdal in the beginning of davening and to say Ani Ma'amin at the very end of davening. In the Siddur that I looked at last time we learned, which was 2 weeks ago, it said, or last week I should say, it said that Yigdal is right as soon as you wake up in the morning. Before you say Berachas HaShachar, people said Adonai Olam and Yigdal. And then after Aleinu, people would say the 13 Ani Ma'amins. So every single day, tens of thousands of Jews, hundreds of thousands of Jews, say an affirmation. They say with their mouth, I believe. And there are 13 affirmations. There's 13 Ani Ma'amins, which we say after davening. And we also say the same 13 affirmations, I believe with perfect faith, that in the form of a song, of a shiur, which is called Yigdal. There are many, many tunes to Yigdal. I mean, you've been in non-Chabad shuls, oftentimes Friday night. Some communities will sing Adonai Olam after Ma'ariv. Other communities will sing Yigdal. In many communities, they sing Yigdal after each tefillah. But it's become a part of Jewish tradition to with your mouth, to actually articulate, to say, I believe this, and this. Yigdal is those 13 affirmations in rhyme, And an Imaimin is the 13 affirmations in prose. Now, the Arizal talked to his students about these prayers. The Arizal lived a long time ago, 450 years ago, 500 years ago. So if the Arizal already discussed Animaimin and Yigdal with his Talmidim, so Animaimin and Yigdal are even older than that, which means they were written in the first couple of hundred years after the Rambam lived. Now, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not. I started preparing today's class, and I realized that I need more time. I'm really not an expert on this. But just from a rudimentary glance, whoever wrote the Ani Maimons wasn't careful. Well, you don't want to mess with a Gadol B'Yisrael who lived 600 years ago and wrote a prayer. Because if you look at the Rambam's original, if you look at the 13 principles of faith that the Rambam wrote, and then you look at the paragraph, at the sentences of Ani Maimon B'Emunah Shleima, there are very important things missing. I don't know how to explain that. It may have to do with the time and place in which these prayers were written. It's certainly possible. But just rudimentary, just as an observer, if you look at the Ani Maimon and you look at the original, which is why, Chavre, I gave you 4 sheets of English. I printed out I sent in the same PDF, the Rambam's Pirush HaMishnah. You see the 13 principles of faith that the Rambam wrote them. I don't have access to them in English. It's not a big deal to find. And the reason I put them there is because I want you to see what the Rambam says and what the author of the Ani Maimon and the Yigdal wrote. I just want to say this. The Arizal was very not happy with these prayers. He did not say that they're false. The Arizal didn't say that whoever wrote Ani Maimon and whoever wrote Yigdal made mistakes. Is wrong. But he said that whoever wrote Ani Maimon and whoever wrote Yigdal didn't have a clue about Kabbalah. He had no idea. He didn't have the slightest idea how every tefillah that people say has a mystical soul that has to support it, or that has to be its anchor. And that Arizal therefore spoke very intensely about not saying them. Rabbi Chaim Vital, the greatest of the disciples of the Arizal, who wrote down his teachings, writes in the beginning of several of his Sfarim that Moiri, the Arizal, used to speak very disparagingly about Yigdal and Ani Maimon, arguing that whoever it was that wrote these prayers didn't have a clue what they were doing. They don't understand Kabbalah. They had no business writing a prayer, and we shouldn't say it. The result of this, of course, is that we don't say it. Lubavitchers are from the few communities of Jews, the Lubavitcher Siddur, we do not say Ani Maimon, and we don't say Yigdal. And to be candid, it's a pity. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to say it. I'm simply saying it's a shod. It's a pity that we don't say it, because saying Ani Maimon every day, I think, would have a lot of meaning. The Rabbeim, beginning with the Alter Rebbe, in their Maimorei Chasidus, would occasionally quote lines from Yigdal, would occasionally quote lines from the Ani Maimons, and explain them according to Chasidus. The Rebbe once discussed this, that the Rebbe said that there's a prayer which is called Shir HaKavod, Anim Zmiris, which a lot of Jews say after Musaf on Shabbos. Chabad does not say Anim Zmiris. You don't say Anim Zmiris. But there are Maimorei Chasidus that explain certain lines from the Anim Zmiris. And the Rebbe said that even though the Alter Rebbe did not put them into his Siddur, and the reason the Alter Rebbe did not put them into his Siddur, because the Alter Rebbe's Siddur is Al Pi Nusach Ho'arizal. The Alter Rebbe wrote his Siddur according to the principles established about how a Siddur should be written according to the Arizal. I wouldn't call it Nusach Arizal, it's Nusach of the Alter Rebbe, but it's Al Pi Nusach Arizal, and the Alter Rebbe is very careful to be loyal to what the Arizal says to say and what not to say. And according to the Arizal, we should not say Yigdal. According to the Arizal, we should not say Ani Maimon. So we did not put them into the Siddur. Our Siddur, the Lubavitcher Siddur, is very precise in many ways. It's precise according to Kabbalah. It's also precise according to Diktuk. Rabbi Lustig from Al-Torah told me, Rabbi Lustig Senior from Al-Torah told me that he learned to Torah B'das. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who was a great Misnagdish Gaon who lived in America, he was a real Talmud Chacham, and he was also an expert Medaktik. He knew Diktuk incredibly well. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said, Rabbi Lustig told me, he heard it from him, that the best Siddur around is the Chabad Siddur. And if it was not that it belonged to the Lubavitchers, we would use it. It's better than the Nusach Ashkenaz, even though so much effort historically has been put in to make the Nusach Ashkenaz meduktuk. He says, I heard this from someone who heard it from him. Rabbi Yankel Kamenetsky, who was one of the great Goyim of Lit in America, said that the Alter Rebbe's Nusach's diktuk, the grammar, supersedes any other siddur. The diktuk is incredibly precise. Alter Rebbe invested incredible time in writing this siddur. And his siddur follows principles of halacha, it follows principles of diktuk, and it also follows principles of Kabbalah. And specifically, without going into the long version of this, there is a concept in Kabbalah called the 13th gate. You can read about this in the introduction to the English Siddur by Rabbi Mangelzla Gezunzan. You can read it there. The 13th gate means that every Shevet, every one of the 12 Shvatim had a different nusach that they davened. Problem is, most people don't know what Shevet they belong to. So if you daven from the wrong nusach, you're like barking up the wrong tree, you're knocking on the wrong door. So the Arizal had this idea that you have to go to a place which is above the division of Shvatim. You have to find a place where all Jews are one. And that's called Shar HaKoilo, the encompassing gate, the 13th gate. And when Arizal designed, Arizal never wrote a siddur. He simply gave instructions about how to write a siddur, and the first person to really take him seriously and do it, or the only person I should say, was the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe said that, again, you can't call the Alter Rebbe Siddur Nusach Arizal, because it's not. It's Alpi Nusach Arizal. And it's called the 13th gate, or the Shar HaKoilo, the all-encompassing gate, the general gate, which is considered higher than other Mitzvas Hatefilla. And again, the Arizal felt that we should not say Ani Maimen and Yigdal, because they're not Oiz Gehalten Apisod, they're certainly not Oiz Gehalten Apisod of the Shar HaYud Gimel, Shar HaKoilo, so we don't say it. But our Rabbeim revered it. Our Rabbeim used to refer to the Yigdal often. Our Rabbeim used to refer to paragraphs, sentences from Yigdal and from the Ani Maimen. We don't say it, but we think it. So I made a decision. I'm the teacher, I can do whatever I want. I can't do whatever I want, but I have some latitude. I made the decision that we're going to learn the Yud Gimel Ikrim. We're going to learn the Yud Gimel Ani Maimen's B'munah Shleim, okay? So I'm going to do two things right now, then I'm going to end the class. There are only 6 questions on your sheet. I think I answered them all. If there's any question I didn't answer, ask me and I'll tell you. I'm going to do 2 things right now. Number 1, I'm going to give you an overview of the Yud Gimel Ikrim. And number 2, I'm going to read them and translate them. Okay? In the coming weeks, I don't know how much time we have left till the end of the school year, I'm going to give several classes on the Yud Gimel Ikrim with the Pirush HaMishnah. In other words, I'm going to bring in what the Rambam says in his own words. And we're going to read the words of Ani Maimen. And I'm not trying to criticize, but you'll see the difference between how the Rambam articulates the 13 principles of faith and how this Machaber wrote the Ani Maimens. Okay? Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, you only answered the first 3 questions. The other 3 are on the Ikrin.
Okay, I'm going to do that soon. That's the second thing I want to do today. I'm about to do that now. Okay, that's the next thing.
Okay, I thought you said you're ending the class.
No, I'm doing 2 more things. I'm doing 2 more things. I'm going to overview the 13 Ikrim, and I'm going to read them and translate them, okay? There are 13 principles, and there's a reason why there's 13. There's a reason. And the Rebbe loves to explore the need for 13 principles. But the 13 principles really are 3 principles. And that's answers to questions 4, 5, and 6. Mayor. It's worth to teach just to, to hear you say how you want me to answer every question. It's really, you make it much easier to do my work. The 13 principles are really 3. And one of the arguments amongst the philosophers is, if the 13 principles are 3, why didn't the Rambam just say 3? Why did it have to split them up into 5, 4, and 4? And this leads to differences of opinion about what we believe, what are our core beliefs. But according to the Rambam, you have to have 13 principles. You have to have 13 principles because they speak to different things that are distinctive, that are separate, okay? However, the 13 principles do fall into 3 broad categories. Category number 1, God. Category number 2, communication. And category number 3, consequence. Notice I used one word. I used one word for each grouping. Category number 1 talks about Hashem. And in answering the question 4, Ikirim 1 through 5. The first 5 that Ikirim discuss Hashem, the Creator. Okay? So I'm giving you one word for each. God, communication, consequence. I wish I could have all three with the same Rosh Tevis, but that doesn't work in English, okay? First 5 Ikirim talk about Hashem. Then there's communication. Communication means that God speaks to people. It's one of the core beliefs that not only did He create us, He communicated with us. The phenomena of communication between God and man is called Nevuah, it's called prophecy. And there are 4 Ikirim, 4, count them, 6, 7, 8, and 9, dedicated to the idea that Hashem communicates with people. And then the last 4 are consequence. Consequence means we're responsible for our actions and we will pay for them, good and bad. And there are 4 Ikirim, 4 principles that deal with what's called in the Ramban, Gmul. Gmul means the consequence of the actions we're going to do. If I do good, I'm going to be rewarded. If I do bad, I'm going to be punished, and so on and so forth. So there are 3 basic Ikirim. 1 through 5 is God. 6 through 9 is communication, that God speaks to man. And then 10 through 13 is consequence, Gmul. That there's reward and punishment, basically. Okay? Now, if anybody wants to say something, speak. Otherwise, I'm going to read the Ani Maimons. I'm not reading Yigdal, I'm reading the Ani Maimons. I want to read all 13 Ani Maimons inside. I would love for you to follow. And in Mitzvah Hashem, in the next couple of classes, we're going to go through each grouping of the Ikirim with the Pirush HaMishnah. And you'll see how much more detail, how much more nuance there is in what the Rambam writes than the Mechaber of the Yud Gimel Ikirim. Okay? So unless you have anything to say, I'm going to read. So I'm reading. Bottom of the first page in the PDF that I sent you. Ani ma'ameh b'emunah shleima, I believe with perfect faith. Sha'abayre yizbarach shemei, the God Almighty, who manhig, He's the conductor, ubayre, and the creator, l'chol abruim, to all creations. V'hu levade, and He alone, asa v'oise v'yaseh, has done, continues doing, and will continue to do, l'chol ha'maisim, on behalf of all creations. Okay? That's the first ikir. Now, if I were to ask you to tell me what you thought was written in the Sikya, you'd have a hard time, right? What is the most important point in the first Sikya? Number 2, I believe in perfect faith. Sha'abayri is Baruch Shmei, that the Creator, blessed be He, blessed be His name, Hu Yachid, He is one, or singular. Ve'ein Yechidus Kamahu, there's no singularity like His, Bishum Padim in any way. V'hu Levadei Elokeinu, He alone is our God, Hoya, Hoiva, V'yeh, past, present, and future. So the second Ikir speaks about what we call in our culture Achdus, that there's only one God, and the nature of His oneness is in every way imaginable, and He's past, present, and future. Question 3. Ikir 3. Pardon me?
So the Rambam got this from a Mishnah?
No, the Rambam wrote it in his commentary to Mishnah. He wrote it, there's one place in Shas that speaks about schar. And he used that format as an excuse, as a platform to discuss all the 13 principles. You understand?
Yeah.
Number 3, I believe in perfect faith. Shabei is Baruch Shmei, the Creator, blessed be His name. Eine guf, He has no body. Because He has no body, anybody who thinks in body terms cannot understand Him. Ve'ein lei shum dimyan klal, nothing can be compared to Him. Number 4, I believe in perfect faith. Shaberi is Baruch Shmei, that the Creator, blessed be His name, is Rishon ve'achrin. He's the first and He's the last. You'll see in Mitzvah Hashem next week what this means specifically, but this usually is associated with the idea that Hashem is above time. And number 5, I believe in perfect faith. Shaberi is Baruch Shmei, that the Creator, blessed be His name, Loi levade roi lehispal. We should only daven to Him. Ve'en lezalosei roi lehispal. We should daven to nobody else. It doesn't pay to pray to anybody but Him. So the 5th ikir is, you need something, ask God and nobody else. That's the 5th ikir. Okay, so now, I just read the first 5 principles with you. These 5 principles talk about Hashem, and you read all 5 and you scratch your head and you're really not sure what they're saying. On the one hand, you don't understand everything that's written here. On the other hand, it may seem to you that there's a little bit of repetition It may appear redundant. It may not appear so concise. We'll get back to this. Okay? If anybody wants to ask me a question or make a comment, you're free to interrupt me now. So I'm reading on. I'm doing the 6th. I believe in perfect faith. Quote, Shekol Divri Neviim Emes. The words of all the prophets are true. I believe in all the prophets. Number 7. I believe in perfect faith. Shenevuas Moshe Rabbeinu Vashon. The prophecy of Moses, our master, may he rest in peace. Hoisa Amitis. It was true. And here comes another point. Veshahu Haya Av. Lachachamim, he was the father of all wise people, and Lachayit means Nevi'im. La'koidmin, the fun of those who came before him, V'laboim acharav, and those who came after him. In other words, that the credibility of Nevuah, even the Nevi'im before Moshe Rabbeinu, is based on the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu existed. So the difference between Iker 5, 6, and 7 will be, Iker 6 is about Nevuah, Iker 7 is about Moshe Rabbeinu. Number 8. I believe with perfect faith. The entire Torah which we have in our hand. He Hanasuna, it's the one that was given Lemesha Rabbeinu to Moshe our master, Al Bashal, may he rest in peace. So this is already about Torah, right? The first one is about Nevuah, the second is about Nevuas Moshe, and the third is about Torah. Now go to the second page of your PDF. On the top, I believe with perfect faith. Torah will never change. There will never be another Teireh. From the Eibush to blessed be He. And this I want you to know is controversial. Some of the friends or colleagues of the Rambam wrote strongly. They disagreed that it's possible that after Mashiach comes there should be different mitzvahs. The Rambam, even though he was a philosopher, says Teireh never changes. So, 4 principles, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, that deal with communication. Number 1, that God speaks to man. Number 2, that the prototype, the ultimate speaker to man is Moshe Rabbeinu. Number 3, Torah, and number 4, the Torah is forever. Notice that there are 4 different ideas. And I'm reading on. Anybody want to interrupt me? Go ahead.
Yeah. There's this very, very popular idea. I don't know where it comes from, that after Mashiach comes, certain animals will become kosher.
It's a medrash. It's a medrash.
But does this argue with that?
That's a fantastic question. For more than one reason, I would rather not answer it. My simple answer to you would be, it does argue with it, and the medrash doesn't have to be understood halachically. But to be frank, I don't really believe that. The criteria is that the Torah gives simanim, right? For something to be kosher, it has to meet certain specifications. If the nature of an animal changes, and an animal that now does not chew its cud, like the pig, which is what you're talking about, begins to chew its cud, there is an argument to be made that the Torah always meant that if and when an animal that now is not chewing its cud will chew its cud, the status will change. This is a very controversial question. And again, if you put me into a corner in a class like this, I would say, don't confuse medrash with halacha. You understand? Usually when I would say to you, don't confuse medrash with halacha, I would actually mean it. In this case, I would be not telling you the whole truth, because the Rebbe actually has a sikha where he addresses this question from a halachic angle. Okay? So, good question. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
So medrash is generally not final or halachically correct?
He opened up a small can of worms, and you opened up a whole barrel of worms. Medrash is never halacha. Medrash is never halacha. But the question is whether medrash is literal or figurative. You understand? Medrash is not halacha. Medrash is medrash. But when the medrash says something, do we apply it practically or not? Halacha means we do it. Medrash means there's such a concept. So when it comes to medrashim, the debate isn't whether something should be done, is whether we understand it literally or it's a mashal. You follow?
Yeah.
So the medrash says the chazan is going to become kosher. We're not saying the medrash is wrong. The medrash is Torah. The question whether the medrash is halachic, those are 2 different questions. You follow?
Yeah.
Like, that's a very, very good question, Zalmi. It's a very good question. Okay, I hope we cleared that up. Anybody else? Okay, so I'm reading now the last four, okay? I believe with a perfect heart. Listen to this one. Sha'abedi is Baruch Shmei, that the Creator, blessed be He, Yodeya kol ma'aseh b'nei Adam. He knows all of our actions, v'chol machshavos, and all of our thoughts. Shenemar, he brings a pasuk, hayoytzer yachad libam, since Hashem created our heart, hamevin al kol ma'aseim, he knows what's going on in our heart. This is basically the pshat in this pasuk. That Hashem knows what we're going to do. Now, Chaver, you know what's missing here? You know what's missing here? Very important thing. Very important thing. Ani ma'im b'emunah shleimah, and free will. None of the 13 Ikim say, I believe in perfect faith that man has free will. It's only that Hashem knows what we're going to do and that we're going to be held accountable. I sometimes say that free will is the 14th principle. There's 13 principles that Rambam writes. The 14th principle is like higher than the 13th principle. Ani ma'im b'emunah shleimah, that man has free will. And therefore he has to believe this, and this. But the Rambam does not include free will in principle number 10. It's just that he knows what we're going to do. 11. I believe in perfect faith. Shabbat is Baruch, the great blessed be Goimel Toiv will do good. Lemisha Yishmer Mitzvah, to one who keeps his mitzvahs. V'Yanish, and he will punish Lemisha Yavad al Mitzvahs, one who transgresses his mitzvahs. So one of the 13 principles is called Schar v'Oinish, reward and punishment. If you're good, you get reward. If you're bad, you get punished. Now, of course, what that means theologically is unbelievably contended. It's very debated. Some people would say that when you do Avedas, Hashem hates you and He wants to destroy you. Some people say you do Hashem's mitzvahs, He likes you and He rewards you. It's a lot more complicated than that. Certainly in Hasidus, we don't believe that Hashem is vengeant. We don't believe Hashem destroys anything. Even when we talk about punishment, we speak about it mostly in terms of correction. But this is the 11th principle, that if we do good, we're going to be rewarded, and if we do bad, we're going to be punished. Number 12. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of Mashiach. And then he adds, even though you may hesitate, or as you sing it in the song, nevertheless, I wait to every day he'll come. And again, we're going to be doing this again. And when we do it again, I'm going to read the Rambam with you, the original. And you decide for yourself if every single word written here is written in the words of the Rambam. And the last principle of the I believe in the resurrection of the dead. When every Eibishter decides, and his memory will be eternal, because the Eibishter is going to affect a concept of resurrection. Now it's 5 to 6, so I'm not doing you any favors. Okay, I'll stop. Next class, which will be Sunday, I'm going to start by reading and translating Yigdal, and then I'm going to do the first 5. I'm going to dedicate 3 more classes to this. One class will be the first 5, and we're going to contrast the words of the Ani Maimin and the words of the Rambam, and you'll see the differences. The class after that is going to be the next 4, and then the class after be the 4 after that. Okay, thank you for listening. I will see you on Sunday. See you tomorrow. We'll do Q&A. Yeah?
Thank you, Rabbi Paltiel.
Yeah, Kol Tov.
Good question.
I'm sorry?
No, I said thank you and good questions to the guys.
Yes,
they were asking that question.
I'll see you tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.